Coming up on Network Africa, the United Nations and Ethiopia reach a deal to allow aid and supplies into the country's northern Tigray region. Medical charity Medicine Sans Frontières pulls out of 2 regions in the Democratic Republic of Congo, citing violence. Plus, Eswatini Prime Minister Ambrose Dlamini transferred to South Africa for COVID-19 treatment. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. The United Nations and Ethiopia has reached an agreement to allow aid into the country's conflict-torn northern Tigray region. UN officials says an assessment mission will now begin as food and medicines are set to be running out for millions of people. A UN source also told Reuters it had established a logistics group with the government to ensure access, although there is no official confirmation yet from Ethiopia. Now, earlier on Tuesday, the United Nations High Commission said it was seeking access to 96,000 Eritrean refugees in Tigray, where food was running out.
The agency is today appealing to the federal authorities in Ethiopia for urgent access in order to reach Eritrean refugees in the Tigray region who are in desperate need of humanitarian assistance and services. Our concerns are growing by the hour. No access to us since the start of the conflict to the 4 refugee camps where there are 96,000 Eritrean refugees. The camps have been there at least over a decade. And when the conflict started, we lost our and it's very hard to verify any information coming out of the region itself. That's why the call to access civilians and refugees as well. Camps will now have run out of food supplies, making hunger and malnutrition a real danger. A warning we have been issuing since the conflict began nearly a month ago. We are also alarmed at unconfirmed reports of attacks, abductions, and forced recruitments at the refugee camps. UNHCR strongly reiterates its call for safety and security of refugees.
Meanwhile, state media reports that a top official from the conflict-hit Ethiopian northern region of Tigray has surrendered. Keria Ibrahim is one of 9 executive committee members of the Tigray People's Liberation Front. Ms. Keria served as Speaker of the House of Federation, Ethiopia's upper parliament, before resigning in June after the planned August election was postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. At the time, she accused Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed of running a dictatorial regime and violating the constitution. In September, TPLF went on and held its local elections, a move that angered the federal government. Well, away from Ethiopia, the importance of improving security and the rule of law for the long-term future of Somalia has been the focus of a high-level meeting in the country. This summit brought together top officials from the country's federal government and federal member states, the United Nations, the African Union mission in Somalia, and other international partners. It is anticipated that 2021 will be a year of change for Somalia's security, with a transition away from AMISOM to the Somali government and security authorities taking the lead and responsibility for the country's security.
It is important, if we are going to achieve gains in security, that we take a comprehensive approach and collective action. Comprehensive in the sense that it is not just military, but it's police, it's rule of law and justice, it's stabilization, both short-term and longer-term, and it's preventing and countering violent extremism. And over time, it's state building as well. Achievement requires collective action. Collective action means agreeing together on the objectives. Collective action means planning together how we're going to achieve those objectives. And collective action means working together to implement what we have identified as objectives and plan to accomplish. So it really does require that we continue to operate alongside one another.
An effective governance of the security sector is not only crucial for stability, but also for the long-term consolidation of democratization and sustainable economic and social development. This is the goal of the federal government of Somalia. This is the aspiration of Somali people.
Well, now let's move back to one of our top stories today. Coming from Ethiopia, we have Simon Max, a freelance reporter based in Addis Ababa, joining us now to speak more on this. Hello, Simon. Thank you for speaking to us. Just help us understand these reports. They're saying a TPLF executive member has surrendered to the government.
Yeah, so the government just very recently put out a statement that Kira Ibrahim, who's the former speaker of the Ethiopian parliament, has what they said surrendered to the government. I mean, the whereabouts of her is slightly unclear. Some in government have said she was actually apprehended in Sudan, although those claims have been denied by the TPLF, the Tigray leadership. But for sure, I mean, she is a pretty central figure to the Tigray party. She had a very key role and was sort of just a number of months ago, sort of unceremoniously kind of quit her position in opposition to the government, and since went back, to her base in the Tigray region. So the government have been using this as a sort of victory march in their efforts to apprehend and charge key members of the Tigray People Liberation Front. She's the first member to actually physically be sort of apprehended by the government.
All right, then let's move on to the conflicts. What is the latest at this time with the conflict on both the government and the Tigray forces side?
So, the government have obviously claimed victory. In reality, it's a fairly simplistic way of looking at it. The national federal forces do have control of many of the urban areas in the Tigray region. But the Tigray forces, according to its leader and several other observers, have simply pulled back into more rural areas around Mekelle, the capital city of the region. They've also claimed to have engaged in fighting in a place called Wikro and have taken back the city of Aksum. And according to Debretsion Gebremichael, the leader of the TPLF, he now has a sort of plan to step by step take back each city. So, it feels like there's quite a long way to go in this conflict, despite the government's claims of having finished its law enforcement operation.
Yeah, and this conflict keeps producing refugees. Now, the United Nations is saying a deal has been agreed for access to provide aid and supplies to Tigray, but then we've not had any official word from the government on this. What is actually happening on ground with regards to the refugees?
Yeah, so the UN did put out a statement that they have been granted unimpeded access to areas within government control. And I think there is somewhat of a sigh of relief that they can get across the border. But, when you speak to officials privately and also donor countries, there's quite a lot of reservation about this access because part of the conditionality for humanitarian aid is that it's neutral, it's independent, it's carried out with freedom, and without government surveillance over their operations. And that doesn't quite seem to be the case because obviously huge areas of the region are still inaccessible to the likes of the UN. So I think it remains to be seen, like when they go in, how much independence do they have? How effective will the aid be? Will they be able to get to refugee camps to the extent they want? And I think hopefully, that will come out in the next few days. Clearly, a lot has gone on at these refugee camps. There's been reports of refugees being dispersed, abducted, even recruited by Amhara militia. All of that, I have to add, is it's unverified. These are reports coming from sort of sources speaking with anonymity. But clearly, there's a lot to get to the bottom of for the UN when they get in there.
Indeed. All right then, Simon Marks, freelance journalist in Addis Ababa. Thank you for speaking to us on Network Africa. Well, the medical charity Medicine Sans Frontiers, MSF, has pulled out from a restive territory in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. In a statement released on Tuesday, MSF said it had decided to end projects in Kimbi and Baraka in Fizi territory due to several violent incidents against the organization this year. Back in July, MSF staff withdrew from that part of South Kivu province, and nearly 70 armed groups signed the ceasefire agreement on the 17th of September this year in the city of Muresha to end hostilities, but efforts to pacify the region is yet to yield results. The Eswatini government has announced the transfer of Prime Minister Ambrose Dlamini to a hospital in South Africa for COVID-19 treatment. The government said the transfer was aimed at fast-tracking his recovery. The Prime Minister Dlamini had tested positive for COVID-19 back in November, and at the time he said he was asymptomatic and was feeling well while isolating at home. Eswatini was formerly known as Swaziland, and the country has so far confirmed 6,442 COVID-19 cases and 122 deaths, according to the Health Ministry. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus has urged all countries to refrain from politicizing the work on tracing the origin of the COVID-19 virus. While speaking from the WHO headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland, Mr. Tedros says the health agency is working diligently to find out the origin of the virus.
WHO's position is very, very clear. We need to know the origin of this virus because it can help us to prevent future outbreaks. And we're doing everything to make sure that we know the origin. And this is a technical issue. And I would like to say some have been politicizing this. Although we have been doing our best to know the origin, let's not politicize this. We're doing everything we can based on science. And what has been a barrier and trying to derail us from what we have been doing scientifically was the politicization of the study of the origin of the virus from some quarters.
Still ahead on the program. Many fleeing the conflicts in Ethiopia have turned to one man to help them with the process. It's a situation all too familiar for Salam Kanoush, a Syrian refugee in Sudan. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. The UK has become the first country in the world to approve the Pfizer-BioNTech coronavirus vaccine for widespread use. British regulator, the MHRA, says the jab, which offers up to 95% protection against COVID-19 illness, is safe for rollout next week in the country. Now, the UK has already ordered 40 million doses, enough to vaccinate 20 million people. The Pfizer-BioNTech jab is the fastest vaccine to go from concept to reality, taking only 10 months to follow the same steps that normally span 10 years. Well, a healthcare professional and founder of the Zenith Global Health, Mary Akongbe, joins us now for more on this. Thank you so much for speaking to us on Network Africa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Now, with this approval in the UK, what is the significance of this approval in the UK on the fight against COVID-19?
Yeah, it is highly significant because, as we all know, COVID-19 have impacted many lives, both physically, mentally, and in terms of loss of the loved ones and healthcare professionals in particular, and also economic implications as well. So for everyone, this is a welcoming relief because we know that now we can begin to get, some normalcy in place. And like I said, especially with the healthcare professionals, they have to go to work and work tirelessly to protect the public and treat the public. And at the same time, they fear for the lives of their family and friends as well. Well, so with this, yeah.
No, you can go on.
Yeah, so with this vaccine now, we can be rest assured that it's a step in the right direction. And it's the beginning of the end to what we've all been experiencing since the pandemic.
Indeed, with these vaccines, it's quite a relief. And the UK Health Secretary says at least by next week, the vaccines will be rolled out in the UK. Do you think in the coming days this will, benefit Africa, and how soon?
Yes, it will benefit us. How soon is what I cannot actually say at the moment, because, and I've said this before, and I'm saying it again, how prepared are we? We need to have logistics in place. We need sensitization, health education, actually, so that people embrace this and there's wider adoption rather than information from social media and from blogs. Again, there's storage, there's transportation. What is the logistics that we want to follow? In the UK, for instance, they are starting with the most vulnerable, those in care homes, the elderly, the healthcare professionals, and then I suppose they probably go from region to region or postcode to postcode. We need to have all of that in place. I haven't had much of that going on across Africa, but I know there's a lot of work going on at the background. So hopefully when we are confident that we have all of this in place, which I believe will be soon anyway, then, we'll start benefiting from it because it's for global production.
Indeed. Now, apart from Pfizer's vaccine, there are others, in the works from the US, UK, China, and even Russia. Is there a possibility, Nigeria and even other African countries can also produce their own vaccines that, the whole world would also benefit from?
I believe so, because we have thought-leading scientists and healthcare professionals across Africa, and they are all working in partnership. Some of them are working in partnership with the industry on various projects, on vaccines, on medications, on other drugs as well. Now, what we need to be aware of is the inclusion in clinical trials. We have to be proactive, because if we are not involved in clinical trials, how do we then make the end product benefit us? In the UK and US, for instance, and indeed, actually, the WHO, there's a big drive for inclusion in clinical trials. And if they are doing, because it's been proven over time that most of the medications and things that come out of trials, the people, the ethnic minority, are not involved in it. So for us to now start manufacturing our own, we need to change our mindset and be involved in clinical trials and be involved in research. And also put things in place, rigorous checks like the MHRA about the safety, the efficacy, and also to be ready to have enough fun to go back to drawing board if it doesn't work well. But I have no doubt in my mind that, we can do it in Africa.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Mary Akongwe, healthcare professional and the founder of Zenith Global Health. Thank you for speaking to us on Network Africa.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Have a nice day.
And you too. Still on health matters, aid agencies say that a low-cost strawberry-flavored tablet for children living with HIV will be rolled out in African countries next year. It is to be the first generic pediatric version of a key antiretroviral therapy, which will be even available for babies. The UN estimates that more than 1.5 million children around the world live with HIV, but says only half receive any treatment. One thing that's made with difficulty for young children to take their antiretroviral medication has been the bitter taste of the pills, and health experts say the flavored tablet will be given in doses that are suitable for children living with the virus. That means no more crushing up of adult-sized tablets. In a few months' time, children in Benin, Kenya, Malawi, Nigeria, and Zimbabwe are expected to receive the new tablets. Well, as we end the program today, we meet a Syrian refugee who is helping thousands of Ethiopian refugees at the Hamdayet Border Reception Center in the eastern state of Kassala. Salam Kanush is a university student and a refugee who fled his home country, Syria, in 2016 after being kidnapped and robbed in Aleppo and several bombings in Damascus. For him, he understands the plight of the Tigrayan people and he is trying to assist in ways he can.
29-year-old Salam Kanush has been living in Sudan for 4 years after fleeing Syria. He is helping to supply clean water to thousands of Ethiopians arriving at the Hamdayet Border Reception Center. Originally from Daraa, Salam Kanush fled Syria in 2016 after several bombings on his university in Damascus made it unsafe for him to continue his learning there.
We were a little bit asked to give the money we have for people we don't know, like this. Then in Damascus, for some time was good time, but before I leave it was really tough. Like the bombing was crazy. You can walk and so most of the time my family has to call, how are you? We heard this happened near the university. So it was tough.
Kanush says his mission is to prove refugees can make really big changes and has since devoted his free time to helping other refugees and people in need. Volunteering for the Italian aid organization COOPI, Salam works on purifying water, setting up transport routes and locating water sources. The organization collects water from the nearby river and from a water station an hour and a half outside of the camp, purifies it and transports it back to the center. The water is filled in large sacks and can be accessed through taps by refugees. Salam has also volunteered in other eastern refugee camps during his time in Sudan and has founded an organization in Kassala that empowers women and youth to start their own businesses.
And that's it on the program for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.